Hi there. So I have my medieval lecture hall background up, and we're going to continue discussing the Summa Contra Gentiles, chapters 1 through 9. Uh, so far, we've decided or pointed out that the purpose of the Summa Contra Gentiles is to defend Catholic doctrine or Catholic teachings, if you like, against those who criticize them, maybe just those who want to understand them better. And the purpose of 1 to 9 is to talk about the relationship between religious faith and human reasoning. And it also talks about the role of the philosopher in Christianity. We looked at a video and we saw that St. Thomas is famous for defending the ability of human reason, unaided by faith, to arrive at truth. This is the idea that any human being, not just a Christian, could have access to great truths whenever they made use of reason. It was possible to have wisdom and no interest or even knowledge about Jesus. It also implies that Socrates and Plato, even though pagans, could be right about some of their points, which, by the way, would defend Boethius's use of Plato and Socrates in the Consolation. And all of this implies that criticisms of Christian claims were not automatically wrong, but worth being addressed case by case by Christians capable of addressing them. So St. Thomas didn't think, well, these things are just, we believe on faith. If you don't believe them, kind of that's end of discussion. No, he thought that most, in fact, probably all of Christian teachings could be defended in some way rationally against people who think that they're wrong. Okay, so let's dig in a little bit into the reading, and we're going to focus here on chapters 1 and 2, the first two chapters. They're short, but they're a little dense, aren't they? They're full of words and expressions that are either new or being used in a different way that you're not used to. It's not very forgiving. St. Thomas writes very formally, and he just keeps moving. It's argument after argument. So I'm encouraging you to be patient with it. You can read it a couple times. I picked a shorter reading on purpose for that reason. And I'm going to do my best to give you some guidance here. And there are at least a couple points here that should surprise you. They surprise me. And there are points about philosophy, which we'll come to in a moment. So the first chapter is a discussion about what he calls the function of a wise man. Function, the job, the role, the responsibility of a wise man. And it's another way of asking, well, what does a wise man do? And the first point that St. Thomas makes is that we call people wise who put things in their right order and control them. Note this he gets from somebody called the philosopher. Now, the philosopher is Aristotle. That's how St. Thomas refers to him. The philosopher, capital P. He's talking about Aristotle. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Back to the definition. What about this? Who puts things in order? I don't think this is so weird as a definition. It may not be what occurred to you. I previously described wisdom as of knowing what's what and the ability to know what to do about it. Okay, and order in my mind refers to that kind of knowing what to do about it. Okay, so it's not giving an order, making people obey orders, giving an order in a restaurant, but it's setting things in order. So, for example, Socrates in the Apology, what does he say? He says the first thing we should do is do what is right and good. Okay, and then after that, everything else. So there's a kind of order to how we should make our decisions about what to do. Boethius, he said we should value internal goods over external goods. Internal goods like freedom from fear and security. So there's a kind of ordering to our lives too. Finally, for maybe kind of a more mundane example, the clerk at Home Depot. So if I'm having problems with my plumbing at home and I pull a part out that looks like it's not working, I go to the Home Depot, I find a clerk and I say, this is not working. And that usually that person will say, oh, I know exactly what you need. So it'll take me down an aisle, show me what part I need to buy. And then he'll say things like, well, make sure you don't screw the screw in too tight. Make sure you watch it when you're putting in anything that you don't break this sort of thing. And what that advice is the advice of a wiser person who knows about these sort of things, who's giving me an order. Again, putting things in order for me. Okay, so yeah, it's a kind of an odd way to talk. We're talking about someone who lived 800 years ago and wrote in Latin. But if you give it a little bit of patience, I think you can kind of make sense out of what St. Thomas is saying. Okay, the second thing said in this chapter, in this first paragraph even, is that different activities can be arranged to work together. So his example is what he calls an apothecary. We might call that a pharmacist and a doctor. So pharmacist gives us drugs to help things like a drug to stop a stomachache. Doctors tell us which things we should be fixing. So that's where they got the idea to treat the stomachache. Different activities are sometimes smaller, more detailed, drilled down pieces of a larger activity. So medicine would involve lots of it. It would involve drugs, it may involve physiotherapy, it may involve an operation, and all these activities have their own specific goals, but those goals are part of larger goals. Okay, so if you're going to build a car, you need to order parts from someone, and so there's part makers, and their job is simply to make the part. Your job is to get the part to put into the car. Your life, you could be organized that way. So you're probably taking this course so you can pass it to complete core. Part of completing core is getting your graduation requirements done. Why do you want to graduate? Because I want to go out maybe to graduate school or get a job or something like that. So again, these ideas not it's a fine idea that we have certain activities that are ordered towards others. Goals are there. St. Thomas uses the word ends. Don't let that trip you up there. Just substitute the word ends for goals. So here's a quote from the reading. These arts that lord it over others are called master building or masterful arts, and the master builders who practice them arrogate to themselves the name of wise men. But because these persons deal with the ends in view of certain particular things, without attaining to the general end of all things, they are called wise in this or that particular thing. Okay? So again, ends, goals. Don't get hung up with that. So what? Well, we're coming to it. The next thing St. Thomas wants to talk about is who would be a wise person without qualification. He says that would be the person who deals with the last end or the last goal of the universe. Now, does the universe have a goal? Well, paragraph 2, says yes. So we know St. Thomas is a Christian. He believed God made the world. If God made the world and God is intelligent, he had some plan in mind for when he made the world. So this is stuff that we saw in book 3 of Boethius near the end there. And so if he had a plan, he had a goal, he had an end, and he wants to do something with creation. So if we look at the second paragraph, let's not worry too much about how that logic is working, because the point there that he wants to get out is the ultimate goal or the last end of the universe, of this process of things being ordered towards further goals and those being ordered to further goals, is truth. That's what he says, specifically truth about God. Okay, and that is not something a Christian would find hard to believe. Okay, and just as a side point, you can't do everything. When you've got a philosophical piece, there's going to be all sorts of things, some which you never heard of before, some which get more complicated. And I'm going to treat this as one of those things. Okay, I kind of get what's going on. I get what the point is. Let's just sort of start it and just keep moving on so we can see where this is going. We can come back at some point in our lives to look back at that argument he makes and whether we should be convinced that the point of the entire universe is true. Okay, so now here it comes. The next thing St. Thomas says is that discussing the truth about God is the wisest thing any human being can do. That follows from if that's the end of ends, then the wisest thing is to know about that end and discuss it. People who know how to do this are, he says, wise without qualification. Not wise about health or cooking or building, but just wise. Full stop, period. And then he says, hang on, here it comes. that people like him, who write books defending Christian truths to people, are doing the same thing that Jesus did when he was on earth, and that philosophers like Aristotle did when they did philosophy. Bingo. What an amazing idea. Okay? Are you kidding me? Did I hear that right? Forget about St. Thomas for a minute. Jesus and Aristotle or even Socrates are doing the same thing. Let that sink in. Can you imagine what a bishop might think if you said that to them? Okay, at least just blurted it out. Okay, so this is a kind of an odd, surprising phrase that all these people are doing the same thing. And it's even more surprising again if we come in mind that pagans are doing what Jesus did. How could that be true in any way? Okay, it gets even better, or maybe worse if you want to put it. In chapter 2, St. Thomas says that pursuing wisdom, doing what he and Jesus and Socrates did, is an activity that is more perfect, more sublime, more useful, and more agreeable than any other human pursuit. Do you feel that way about what we've been doing for the last 5 minutes or so? Well, I guess 10 minutes. Yeah, 11 minutes. Is this the most agreeable, most useful thing you've ever done? Is it the most sublime thing you've ever done? Whatever that means. If you don't think so, then what's wrong with you? Okay? So here's a few things that St. Thomas says about why he thinks that this is the case, and I'll leave it for you to look at for yourself. So to sum up here, so we've made 5 points. A wise man puts things in their right order. The more general the goal, the wiser a person knowing the goal is. The wisest person and the wisest activity of all is discussing the truth about God. 4, philosophers are like Jesus. And discussing the truth about God is the most perfect, sublime, useful, and joyful thing you can do. Well, I think that's enough for us to chew on for a bit.